Hi, it's Jeff here. Before we start our latest pod, just a quick word to remind you of the Harpin Guinness Pint Predictor League. There's still loads of time to enter and win prizes. You can, of course, win yourself a free pint from each individual prediction. And also, the highest score from a single week gets a copy of the book on how you become a pro rugby player by Brian Moylett. He spoke to us on a bonus pod during the week. You can enter by first downloading the free Fanzo app, then joining our league. Just enter the code Harpin, that's Harpin, and keep forecasting the scores from the remaining games of the Six Nations. Right, it's time to start harping on rugby. But since there wasn't a whole lot of scoring in the second half, I thought I'd take the chance to look at a few of Ireland's unit combinations to see how they were faring on the day, as well as how they compared to what Andy Farrell would field if everyone was fit. We'll start with the critical 12 and 13 jerseys. This was an unusual pairing for Ireland, with Stu McCloskey at 12 and Bundee Aki on the outside. How do you think they got on overall, Conor?
I think if you watch back the press conference afterwards, and somebody asked Andy Farrell that exact same question, and you can see it on his face where he says, oh, look, there's lots of good and lots. And there's almost a hesitation as he doesn't say lots of bad. He says lots of work-ons. And you can see him trying to find words, because I think looking back, if this had been a different game against different opposition, and I know it wasn't, but that decision could have come back against us. Because you've got two players who are very, very similar in what they do. They run good attacking lines. They push up hard in defense, and they're both really, really good at what they do. But interestingly, Mark Jackson put it in the chat during the week that they're both guys who defend really well north to south, but don't defend as well east to west. You need somebody who's got that mindset, and you see it with the likes of Ringrose a lot, where he'll trust that man to make that tackle, knowing that if he pushes himself out 2 phases later, he'll have to make this next tackle. And there's a real thought process in how he positions himself defensively, which I don't think either Aki or McCloskey has in the same way. I say they're very good. It's like, we're in a defensive line, I am pushing up, I am making my tackle, and they'll hit that tackle every time. Or you'd like to think they'd hit that tackle every time. On the day, I haven't seen McCloskey's numbers. I have heard that Aki's credited with 5 missed tackles on the day, which is a huge number for your 13 to be missing. You're creating a barn door there for fellas to run through if you're not making those tackles. And you wouldn't criticize 1 or 2, but 5 is a big, big number. I don't think against any tier 1 nation, given everybody being fit, we'd ever see this combination again. I think it's the kind of combination you play when in your head you're thinking, okay, if we make mistakes, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world. We can clean up on those mistakes, and we can do more positive than any mistakes might create. But I think in this game, yeah, there's a little bit of that. I think there has to be less of that now, and we'll talk more about it afterwards, about how Italy have come on and how they have progressed and how they are a much better team to play against. I think Italy 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been concerned with that centre pairing. But today, now, you have to be concerned. You have to look and say, are we putting the best 2 together that we can? I know Tom's going to talk a lot about some of the options that we have, and I've got some thoughts myself on that. But if you've got a fully fit set of centres, I think you need either Ringrose or Henshaw in there, because they both have that mindset of how do I track across the field, not just how do I defend forward and back. And either of those 2 from Saturday afternoon, with either Ringrose or Henshaw fully fit, you've no concern. You're not worried, because one or other of Ringrose or Henshaw is going to be making the calls and dictating how the defensive line will run in those situations. But the fact that both of them were missing, I think it really highlighted the importance of having 2 different types of centres. And in attack as well. I mean, if you look back, let's go back 10 years to where you'd have had Darcy and O'Driscoll playing together. Two very, very different centres, both very capable in what they do. But you would find that in attack, you'd more frequently have Darcy running that direct, hard line, and you'd more frequently have O'Driscoll running the slightly more creative line. And in the same way, what we would normally have in the Irish setup is that a direct one and a creative one who's north and south, one who's east and west. But having the two fitting the same mold, I don't think it worked well for us on Saturday, and I think it would hinder us, as I say, against any of the top 5 nations in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you say, the key thing is not just them individually, because I mean, we can be very sensitive to we don't want to be looking to criticize, same as Andy Farrell, the actual individuals involved, because both have done really well for Ireland. Stu McCloskey filled in really well. He had really 2 good opening games. Bundee Aki has played well for Ireland in the past. He was big down in New Zealand, and he's always stepped up when called on. It's just the combinations of the two together. And Tom, I mean, obviously, we're all Leinster fans here, and we know that people say we're biased or whatever, but in all honesty, I mean, is there any dispute that the ideal pairing for Ireland in these 2 positions is Henshaw and Ringrose? And of the 2, I mean, if Gary isn't available, maybe it should be Robbie that goes to 13.
Yeah, there's no question that Gary Ringrose is, he's in the form of his life. I think it's just a given, and it's no question as well that the second up on that list is Robbie Henshaw if he's fit. I suppose it is funny, given the pre-match talk all week about the rights and wrongs of calling up a Leinster 3rd or 4th choice player and that whole thing pre-match. It sort of turned out that the right call would have been to play Leinster's 3rd choice player 13 in Jimmy O'Brien, because as Conor touched on it, and as Mark said in chat, he's right, as in both are 12, so they defend north to south on the pitch, up and back. For a few of the Italian moves, they just weren't connected together. And what you miss is we lacked a bit of depth in our attack as well. Gary Ringrose has a great ability. You're a natural 13, knows when to sit and knows when to go. Not once did we shoot out of the line and push the Italian attack back in towards heavy traffic. We kept, going up straight. So that if you're running straight at somebody, it makes it very easy. We didn't drift and on defense, and we didn't give that depth when we were in attack, and it was evident even though it was a few minutes. And I wouldn't like to be criticizing Aki or Farrell for this. This was just a system thing between 9 and 13 for me. That whole unit just didn't work as a unit for a lot of the game, and Conor's right against more stiffer opposition, and that's no disrespect to Italy, who rightly should get a lot of plaudits for the way they played. They exposed it. Old Italian teams wouldn't have exposed it. They've seen a weakness there, and they did expose it. But yeah, there's no question going forward. If Ringrose is not fit, and it has to be Henshaw 13. I think that experiment is gone now. Funny enough, Jamie Osborne, who's still in the squad, has played a lot of 13 as well. I know he's been moved around a bit, but it just does make a difference if you've got somebody that knows when to drift and knows when to defend, go wider. And it did expose Lowe's, whose defense has come on leaps and bounds since the first time we seen him getting off a plane. He got exposed as well, and that just shows you the benefit of having somebody that drifts onto him rather than just shooting out and he's left totally exposed, because he's a world-class player, but he has a weakness in defense that's nowhere near as evident as it used to be. The guy has really improved in his defense, but in this instance, Lowe was exposed a few times, but it's a system thing, and I think the coaches have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, Conor.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, he's got to take responsibility for making sure he picks the best players available. And I think if the system, if the players he's picking don't quite fit the system, then he needs to pick players who do, and he needs to find a better option for it. And it's not like we're short of options. There's plenty of players who could step up. When you look towards the World Cup and the number of players we have who could step up and potentially put their hand up and say, I want to be on that plane, with Ringrose, Henshaw, Aki, Stuart McCloskey, and then you've got Jamie Osborne, you've got Frisch down in Munster, who's quite a creative player. Has he got what it needs defensively from an Ireland point of view, that's not for me to decide. I think he's got a lot of positives to offer. I think Jamie Osborne, and as Tom rightly said, Jimmy O'Brien, who stepped into that 13 channel. And again, because he's got so much time playing in the backfield, he has that sense of drifting side to side, east to west, not just north to south. He knows when to step up. He knows when to step in. We've got a lot of really, really positive options from a national perspective. Some really good players. And I think the question now is who would make the plane? And one way or another, how do we make sure that we have either Henshaw or Ringrose fit for all those big games? Like I say, if you had Aki at 12 and Henshaw at 13, I'd be a lot less concerned than
they've literally won the league with that pairing.
Yeah. And say no concerns with that. And I'm not in any way trying to say that anyone isn't deserving of their place in that squad. It's just, are they right for the system? Are they right for what we're trying to see? And are they right defensively to make sure that we're not leaking 2-3 tries in the game? We went into Saturday with 4 tries for and 1 against being our average this year, and then the Italians managed to get a couple on us. It's not what we want to see.
Yeah, Tom.
I think, to be fair to Andy Farrell, and I'd sort of putting the blame, for want of a better word, or criticism at the foot of the coaches. I think if you'd asked any fan, if you polled 100 fans online, there's more province to at, and you told them these are the players available, I guarantee you 95% of them, including myself, would have picked McCloskey and Aki, and we wouldn't have had the balls to go for Casey, Rossbourne, maybe Aki or McCloskey, and then Jimmy O'Brien. As much as we think, it didn't work, I think, to be fair, I think he went what he thought was the safest call with 2 experienced guys, and it didn't work. That's fair enough. It didn't work.
And again,
okay.
in fairness, in any other game, this would be a different conversation. It worked out for this game in the same way it would work out against most, anything from sort of the top 7 or 8 teams down. It can be made to work. But when we go up against those top teams, that's when we need to have that solid defensive framework that 2 good centers working differently creates.
Yeah, this whole topic for us is a provincial minefield, really, because we're conscious of bigging up our players and afraid of criticizing others. But we've said before, we don't think Andy Farrell really cares about that. And when you look at it, if you look at it from the Italians' point of view, when that announcement was made that Ringrose was dropped out on Friday, surely to God, the first thing they thought of is, right, what can we do with this? What can we do about this? And they looked, and Tom also said, it's not just the 12-13, it's 9 and the 10 as well. We literally had those 4 positions were 1 from each province, right? So there was just a familiarity issue, just a basic familiarity issue there as well. And they would have looked to exploit us. And look how they did go at us in those early stages. They were throwing their number 8 at us in those opening channels. And I think in that early first few minutes, the break was made between our 12 and 13 in that first few minutes. So they were going for that as well. It's what they did. You look for weaknesses in the other team, and when they knew Ringrose wasn't playing, that's just something they went for. I don't think it's a problem to say that it's in an ideal world, if we can have one of the 2 from Henshaw and Ringrose, if not the 2 of them, it's better to have them in there. But we're going to need options. We were lucky in this sense that we had Italy, all due respect to them as well, but we had them in this portion where there was a week before and a week after where we could get this game, and we still managed to get the win. So it just worked out okay for us. Yeah, Conor. Yeah.
I also think one other important thing that needs to be highlighted is that Aki's lack of game time. I think that's a significant thing moving forward. Let's take this game out of the equation. I think if he's not playing regular provincial rugby, that's going to create a problem for Ireland. And whatever's going on over there in Connacht, they need to get that sorted and make sure that he's getting out and playing, because I think a couple of the mistakes that happened they're not typical. They're not usual. And I could only accredit them to a lack of game time and a lack of just being out on the pitch.
I think you probably hit the nail on the head, Jeff, with the cohesion. I answered a question on Twitter today. Somebody asked about when's the last time we had 4 different provincial players at 9 and 13, and it was against Fiji, I think, in 2017, where we had Marmion, Carberry when he was still with us. We had McCloskey and Farrell, and we only bet Fiji in the last couple of minutes. I think it was 23-20 or something like that when I looked at the score. So cohesion is a big thing in international rugby. It's Ireland benefited, because the guts of the Leinster team, or there's a lot of Crusaders with New Zealand, and the heady days of Australia, there was only 2 teams, so cohesion does matter a lot. I think it's harder for England and France to get that cohesion compared to other countries, and it was just didn't work today, unfortunately.